Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy, all y'all. This is Red O'Loughlin. This is the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I'm very, very happy today to have a university professor join us. Dr. Kate Risse is a professor at Tufts University. She talks about Spanish culture, Spanish language, climate justice, a few other things. Anyway, please join us, Kate.
Ed.
Did you realize that 10, 20 years ago you were going to be a college professor?
I spent a long time studying and researching, so I would hope so. Yeah, I think so.
So that was a job opportunity that you were kind of thinking about, and as you got closer, it became more and more concrete?
Yeah, I think in the program that I studied in, you're really on this track to do that. I know some higher degrees, you have a bunch of different options, but with this particular degree, you're pretty much on that track for teaching and research.
Okay, so your PhD is in Hispanic
Studies, yes.
Studies, yes. And tell us a little bit about that. What does that encompass?
Wow, a lot of countries, and it spans many centuries. And I ended up focusing on the 17th century in Spain. However, I don't teach that now. I teach more language and culture, and I teach a couple of different courses, and it covers it just covers a wide range of countries, topics, and time periods. And my favorite course to teach is called Land, Climate, and Justice. It's called Tierra, Clima y Justicia because it's in Spanish, but that's my favorite course to study. And we begin in like the 1200s and we read Aztec poetry, and then we go all the way to the year, basically 2022. So it covers a lot of different time periods and countries.
Have you visited many of these countries?
I haven't been south of Costa Rica. I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and I've been to some of the Caribbean countries, including Cuba.
Uh-huh. How'd you find Cuba?
Am I supposed to say that? No.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I went with some friends who were also filmmakers. They had made a documentary, and I went in December of 1999 to January of 2000. So it was quite interesting, festive.
What was that thing that we're fearing, the end of the 2000 millennial order?
Yeah, Y2K.
Y2K.
Yes, there was a lot of talk about that on the beach.
Okay, so you've been here, there, and yonder. You've written a lot of stuff about it. You teach about it all the time. What is your most favorite? I mean, obviously you have Aztecs, you have this, that, and whatever, but you must have a favorite that resonates. That when you're talking, you just have a real passion about it.
That is so hard. I really love the material I teach, and I've thought a lot about it, and I've done a lot of research. I do love the conquest, and it's just so horribly tragic. but I do like the point at which, these two civilizations sort of crash. And then I guess you'd call it like the cultural production that comes out of that, whether it's, uh, you know, writings and descriptions of the pre-conquest civilization and their writings and their religious texts, or whether it's Christopher Columbus's first letter back to Spain from the New World, which was not the New World. It was an old world.
I was amazed one day. I was driving home from work and they were talking about alternate history. And the guy was saying, yeah, what if the English had settled in Mexico and South America and the Spanish had settled in Canada? What would the world be like today? And
that'd be a great new novel. Somebody could write that as a semi-historical piece of fiction or something.
And it would be an interesting way to look at how that culture develops, because it would add it would add a different dimension. But the same thing I said, what if the Dark Ages had never occurred and we were able to put a man on the moon in the year 1000? There again, where would we be today 1,000 years later? Lots of things are out there for speculation, but on yours, you have a book, and that book is Inland. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah. Inland is a novel about a rapid rise in sea level along the eastern seaboard, and a mother who has gone down to the panhandle of Florida, what they call the Forgotten Coast. And dear God, may it remain forgotten in some ways, because it's a really beautiful area. A lot of it is not very built up. And she's separated from her family when this climate weather event happens. And so a lot of the novel is this character named Juliet trying to get back to her family, driving along the eastern seaboard as the water rises, and trying to communicate with her 16-year-old son through a cell phone that is working sometimes, but other times not, because the cell tower infrastructure, along with other societal structures, is collapsing.
Interesting. What caused this interest, and then what caused you to actually go write a book about it?
That's a good question. Also, I just want to add that the book, and I really wanted to make sure this happened, the book is set in 2026. So it's not like an apocalyptic or a dystopian story that, has references to some event happening far away and it's hard to define it. It takes place sort of in the here and now. I think the description and the descriptions and the scenes and so forth and the dialogue, it does feel like it's happening around the time we're living in, maybe a couple of years on. Mm-hmm. And I travel a lot from the Panhandle to Boston. I've done it numerous times driving. And lately I've seen a lot of weather, say like in the last 5 or 6 years. I started the book 5 years ago, but it was a lot of, I don't want to say extreme weather, but weather that felt not normal. And then in 2018, Hurricane Michael hit this area of the Panhandle, and it was a Category 5, and it left a lot of destruction, both on the mainland and on the barrier island where my mom spends a lot of time. And so I did not witness the hurricane, but I was there in the aftermath and saw a lot of destruction. And so that's pretty much how I got the idea to write that. And I also, for some reason, I feel like I end up on islands a lot, and I definitely am aware of the fact that when you're on an island and the weather's bad, you can't get off, and sometimes you don't know when you'll be able to get off. So that was one of the kind of anxieties driving my story.
Interesting you should say that, because I live in Houston, and we just had Hurricane Beryl last month, and we were out without electricity for literally 7 days where I live. And
I'm so
I'm
sorry.
on an island. I'm not on an island, but with gas stations shut down, no electricity, even if you wanted to get away, wherever you're going to go to is going to be far away, and they are probably filled up with people who got there ahead of you. Because I was one of the ones in the evacuation of Hurricane Rita, and it was, I mean, it started out as a 1 lane, 2 lane road, and it ended up hours later, both lanes and both shoulders were all 4 lanes going one direction. Just evolved over about 50 miles. But anyway, it's interesting to be living through some of these events. And you used a term when backstage, cli-fi. Never heard of it. Don't know what it is, but you said you wanted to make sure we covered it today. So while we're early in the show, let's go ahead and talk about cli-fi.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say emerging genre because it's been around for a little bit, but it turns out it's a pretty robust genre, and a lot of people are writing stories about climate fiction. And I'm interested in the component of this kind of writing that takes place very close to where we're living, rather than dystopian or apocalyptic story. And yeah, I'm sort of fascinated in terms of how people are setting the scene for this. And it is fiction, some of it may be like loosely based on science, but it really is something creative. And I'm interested also in the hope and the possibility of survival and adaptation, and how we might prepare ourselves and survive some of this stuff.
Have you done any personal preparation for survival?
That's a really good question, because I have been reading a number of novels that are probably considered cli-fi, where people do everything from like pack a bag full of necessities to survive by the door. And, in the novel, they end up grabbing it, running out the door, fleeing, and using it. And in my story, the 16-year-old boy does make a list of survival behavior that he needs to follow. And, he tries to follow it in order to survive. And he also talks about, they prepare us so well in this suburban school I live in, but why aren't they preparing us for extreme weather?
There's so many things that schools don't teach us that we really need to know by the time we get in our 20s. Actually, we need to know before that. But
that is true.
I just had a gentleman on the show before this, author on the corner bookstore, and he was talking about grief and PTSD and stress, and he lost his wife, and I mean, just a lot of things that happen, but we're never trained to deal with it. And then we have to go out on our own, and we think, yeah, I'm a big man here, I don't need all that stuff. But in reality, sometimes you need professional help. And sometimes the situation is you can't get professional help. In fact, I just signed up for a doctor's appointment today. They said February 12th. And I said, what? And they said, well, if you want to see another doctor, we can do this one on December, whatever. I said, well, put me down. We'll figure it out down the road. But, it's interesting. I want some help. I want professional help. I want it, reasonably soon, but not 6 months from now. That's the way, that's what it is. So,
I am really interested just on this topic. I am interested in how schools do teach climate change. Everything from just educating people about what's going on, in both science classes and humanities. My children are grown, but we did early on have a green team where we taught students about recycling and planting trees and gardening, and it just a lot of different stuff. And I think schools are starting to do more of that, as well as teaching the science of it in science classes. But I think the curriculums are going to have to be infused with this stuff more and more down the road, or now.
Bill O'Reilly, TV host, he has a phrase he uses quite often. It says, "People believe what they want to believe." And it's interesting. How do we get a belief? Well, sometimes we get it from our family. Sometimes we get it from our school. Sometimes we get it from the people we hang around with. Some of us go into further education and try to find out more about things. But when people believe what they want to believe, they're going to believe, yeah, climate change is absolutely a problem, or it's not. And it can be applied to across the spectrum of a number of different topics. But on climate change, there's a lot of activity out there on the political world. There's a lot of activity out there on various governmental levels. And now we have a climate fiction genre that we can take and develop and use what we want or not want in whatever direction we want to go in. And I think that's kind of a good deal because it opens up, again, more information for people to think about. I mean, me being a military aviator and I had a to-go bag. It was sitting right there. If I hadn't needed, I'm walk out the door. So I understand that concept of having something by the door that has my flashlights and my whatever else I need in there to get by. My wife and I walked the Camino de Santiago, 500 miles across Spain, a few years ago, and we were carrying in our backpack, 3 days supply of whatever we had, and mine weighed 18 pounds, my wife weighed 15 pounds, and we managed to go from point A to B to C to D, and without a problem. We had to buy a couple things along the way. Found out a couple items. One item we had wasn't that valuable. Actually, two items probably weren't that valuable. So we learned a lot about what we really needed in there. So if I'm looking at surviving some type of, not instantly created, but over time, because even Beryl we knew it was coming. We knew where it was going. But until it hit you, where I lived, we stayed in the eye wall. We were not in the eye. So you just happen to have a lot of wind, and it broke a few things around here. But if I knew I had to evacuate and I have a day before the storm hits, do I have that bag by the front door? I don't even know what to, well, I know what to put in the bag, 90% of it, but most of us don't have a list. And so I think from what you're talking about, you get people, okay, if I'm that 16-year-old kid, what am I thinking? What am I doing? That's a different perspective than just talking about you should have this and this and this and this, because you're not in the mindset of knowing what you need, especially when the environmental conditions around you change. So
I have a good friend who lives out in California, unfortunately in um the fire areas, and she has horses and she keeps her horse trailer packed and ready because she knows she may have to throw her horses in there and get out as fast as she can.
is there a specific item that you would have as a survival person? I mean, I've thought about this myself, and to me, it would be a sat phone. I don't have to rely on the towers around me if they're still standing or if they're functional. But with a sat phone, I would at least have communication. There's probably other things out there in that same realm, but unless you're actually thinking about it, we wait till the last minute and then somebody tells us, don't forget. Well, those are common things, but to me, a sat phone would be a primary item in that bag by the front door.
Yeah, that's great. I should think about it more. In all honesty, I haven't. I spent a lot of time in Vermont, and there are where we are in particular. There's been a lot of precipitation, and I don't know what you could do for that. There's a lot of water saturation, but I should think about it. I suppose I haven't had to, run and leave, but we have a lot of water coming in.
Yeah, yes.
Some pumps or something.
Let's get back to you and your book. When did you decide you want to write a novel?
I've had a writing group for a really long time, over 30 years. And I I wrote stuff with them when I was younger, and then I kind of took a hiatus for several years. And then I went back to this group. We meet online, we meet in person, and we go away a couple times a year for like a writing workshop. So I would say around 6 or 7 years ago, I started thinking again about writing a novel, and that the group that I'm with, was pretty instrumental in encouraging me and supporting me. They were with me for the entire rough draft, which, by the way, a lot of it took place over COVID. And so we did meet online, and that was really great to have that group. I remember, I think COVID started maybe like in March. I remember we had to leave the classroom in March. And by September, there weren't vaccines yet, but we were all able to test and quarantine and then actually meet in person, which was amazing. And so it was probably, 5 or 6 years ago. And then through COVID with them, that's when everything picked up for my novel.
Okay, so when you write a novel, you're telling a story and you need a timeline. Did you actually have a timeline on your wall or your computer that kind of kept you, week by week, and how the story changed and the characters and all that? Tell us how you kept track of all that, because that's kind of a difficult thing for a new author to do.
Yeah, it's a good question. I did map some stuff out. I definitely didn't like sort of think, I have 2 years to write this or anything like that. I'm very disciplined about getting up in the morning. I get up really early. I think that comes from having to write a dissertation. And because I always used to get up really early to write that. So I am pretty good about scheduling my writing. I did map stuff out. Sometimes it was visual. Like I would put, maybe scenes and characters and maybe put stuff up on the wall. I will divulge this. My story, I ended up cutting it up and moving chapters around. And that, again, did take some mapping.
Did you have a picture?
Sorry, like my final, the final novel is, quite different from the early drafts.
As it should be. Yeah.
I think so.
And so what you're talking about is developmental editing. You're trying to figure out where these sections are. Do they make sense? Do they lead on to? So when we talk about editing a book, the real hard part is the developmental editing, character development, location, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've talked to some authors and they have pictures of their characters. So you have a 16-year-old boy, is that your son at 16? Or was this a neighbor kid at 16 that you admired? But how did you decide on a 16-year-old boy and this location?
I haven't really talked about the subplot of this novel, but I'll tell you really quickly. There is a subplot that has to do with the iPhones. And this is the sort of speculative component of the novel. They've been banned in the world I've created. There's a component of them that causes people to get really sick, and it affects young people in particular. It's not a huge part of the novel, but it is there. And so I think a lot of the writing and the fact that I chose these young people was just observing in my own life and also in the school where I teach and in my neighborhood how young people are using social media. So that was something that really, just watching it and observing it in everyday life compelled me to write about that as well.
Okay, so you have characters, and when you have characters, you have to have dialogue. So how do you get your mindset into a 16-year-old and into a mother? Obviously it's easy for the mother, but there's other authorities that are out there that are probably interacting with this emergency. So from a author's perspective, to help other authors, how do you develop, because we're storytelling, how do you develop this person talking versus another person? How do you change your mindset to make sure that, if I'm a police officer, I'm whatever. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about that, because we're here, we're talking to an author, and we have a topic that's I think of good interest. So let's delve into this thing a little bit more from the author's perspective.
Dialogue is really major. And like the best advice I could give somebody is to make sure that you really have a good chunk of time where you can sit with it and you can really think about the character, say the 16-year-old son. You really need to get to know that character. And I edited my dialogue a lot. I would write his conversations or his dialogue with other people, and then I would just read it over and over again. And you really have to sit with it, and you really have to acquire the voice. Like I really feel like Billy, the 16-year-old character, is really almost like a real person. Like if you said to me, what would Billy think about this? If you asked me what he would think about something that had nothing to do with my novel, I almost would have an answer because I feel like I know him so well. So you really do need to get to know your characters. They need to speak differently than the other characters in the book. They need to be three-dimensional individual people. And I've read books where you don't really feel like that. So, I'm hoping my book does feel like that. There are also two adolescent girls in the novel. Their names are Lana and Agnes, and they end up joining Billy in his collapsing home during this massive sea level rise inundation. And that was tricky too, because one girl is 16 and one girl is 18. And I had to differentiate between them. And that was challenging to try to get their voices as well. But I did a lot of sitting with them and thinking about them and really differentiating between them. I have two daughters, and these characters are not based on my daughter, but I do have two daughters who are have that age difference, and they are really different people, as siblings are. So you need to kind of, inhabit these characters' minds and really manipulate them and work them into different characters who feel real.
Your book won the Reader's Choice Award Bronze in 2024. Tell us how that process went to get a book award.
I had to be nominated by a reader, and yeah, I think I had to be nominated by a reader, and then submit some material. It's often you have to submit a like a synopsis and maybe some reviews and that kind of thing. It was a pretty easy process, I think.
So if somebody nominated you, you were aware of it at the time, or is this a total surprise?
Yeah, no, I was aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any other awards?
No, but I think I will be. My novel was published in June 15th of this year. So it hasn't really been that long, but I would like to submit it to some other, writing contests and things like that. I think I probably will do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another quick question on writing. Did you use any AI at all in your development of your plot or your book whatsoever?
Wow. Absolutely not. We're always battling AI in the classroom, right? So it's sort of, it's a bit of an enemy for me sometimes. In my classes now, in some of them, we ask students to come in and write things in person, whereas they used to be able to write things at home. We just do this old-fashioned thing now. I think some people are like, oh God, how are we going to deal with AI? Like, oh God, it's infiltrating everything. And, you ask the students to come to class, you hand them a piece of paper and an old-fashioned pen. No computers are allowed. And then they write their fabulous essay. But in terms of that, no, I absolutely did not. No, I'm a Luddite in some ways. I really am. I wouldn't even know how to do it, frankly. But I have noticed. I have noticed with some like contests and things like that or even submissions for short stories or poetry or novels, these places say, please don't use AI. So I guess it's something that happens, right?
It can be used. I mean, it's a tool, and you use tools in certain ways, and there's a lot of different ways to use tools. So depending on what you want the final result to be, yes, there may be some AI assist in cover design, in proofing for 8th grade level, in doing a lot of things that you still own the intellectual property. That doesn't change. It just gets slightly tweaked for whatever you're looking for. So if I wanted to go in there and do something with spelling, like spell checkers are artificial intelligence, grammar checkers are artificial intelligence. But
I was just going to
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I have used AI for stuff, but maybe I'm just not admitting it. I don't know.
Okay.
I also, I feel like I'm such a control freak, and I'm so obsessive about what I'm writing that I would, if I used AI, I would probably spend hours rereading. It wouldn't be worth it. I'd spend hours like, is this exactly what I want? But I didn't want that, and I didn't want this, and oh no, I better say it in a better way. And I think when I do it, like, I know it's me, and so I just kind of have to live with it.
And for me, I don't write in novels. Most of my stuff is I do research on the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking, looking for cause and effect relationships of disease and other things. And so when I want to know 15 different causes of Alzheimer's, I can ask AI and they're going to give me that information. But if I'm writing a novel, I may want to say, tell me about this location where I can look at maps and buildings and other things where I can actually see them because AI can tell me and show me. And then in my book, I can say, okay, I went into this bar or whatever it may happen to be, or I came out of this flower shop and I'll turn to the right and there was whatever. So I think AI can help authors in a lot as far as guiding them, but not necessarily writing for them. I think you still need that own intellectual property. You've written so much stuff, your dissertation and all the other things that you did. I didn't realize how much sitting there and writing in front of a classroom, or not in a classroom. I had to take English summer school, so I took it at night. And the worst teacher of that particular university had our class. And because we were working during the day and at night, he was one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. But daytime students, he was a terror. But every night we had to write, every single night, and he would spend the time to actually give feedback to us. And that, to me, I think was a seminal moment in my writing, was the fact that I now felt comfortable writing, regardless of what it was. And that led to other things down the road, and 1,000 of articles later and stuff. Boom, here we are today. And but anyway,
Yeah.
do you have another book coming out?
Do I have another book coming out? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
No. My book just came out again, like in June. It hasn't even been 2 months. So I'm spending time with that. I'm doing podcasts and writing things, writing articles, blogs, doing interviews, that kind of thing.
Is your book available in Spanish?
No, it's not. Although, no, it's not. It's not. Yeah, it's not. It's not available.
Is that a plan?
Oh, I'd love it, but not right now.
Not right now. Okay, so another book may be coming out, and maybe the Spanish version of your book whenever that's appropriate.
Or maybe another novel, or maybe a nonfiction book about, something I teach. I'm not sure, really. I've also thought about a sequel to this, just because I don't want to give the ending away, but there is some unfinished business at the end that could lend itself to continuing with this story of this mother trying to find her family.
Fair enough. Do you do any podcasts in Spanish?
No, not yet. That'd be interesting.
You teach that. You help other people learn the language. It's a bigger audience. Obviously, we have people who speak both English and Spanish, and that may prompt you into getting that Spanish version out sooner. I don't know. But it's
that would be really hard. I did recently help a publisher with doing some translation from English to Spanish and Spanish to English. It's time consuming. It takes a lot of time.
There's no doubt. And even if you have AI translated for you into Spanish, and there's a lot of that out there. In fact, there's some software right now. I could be speaking Portuguese or Japanese or whatever. My lips would sync up to exactly what that word would be in Japanese. And you would have no idea in the world that I'm speaking English, but it's being translated and represented as a foreign language. And that's available, and it's very inexpensive. And so I could.
Don't you worry that there's errors in that? When I hear that, I think if it was something written that was going to be published and you're using AI, I would have a really hard time just saying, okay, the AI, quickly translated this thing for me and all's great. Let's move on. I would really wonder about that. And I would want to go over it. I do some translating with my students, and it's really quite an artistic endeavor. I mean, you have many options when you're translating. It can be wonderful. It's something I'm actually really interested in. And I love to see how my students will take something and they'll, of course, when I ask them to translate, we're going from Spanish into English. But I love to see the different ways that they express that. It's really, it can be quite, the words that they choose, the individual words, like the syntax, the combinations of words in the sentence can be quite different. And I love to show my students that, because I think sometimes they think like, oh God, I've got to find the perfect word, or they will try to translate exactly word for word, which really often does not work very well. But it's an art, and I think it's really interesting.
Sí, cómo no.
¿Cómo no? Muy bien, Red, tú hablas español, qué bien, me alegra saberlo.
But anyway, we're getting toward the end. Is there a topic or something that you wanted to make sure we covered today before we get to the end?
Well, I don't want to, open up a big can of worms that could start another long conversation, but I am really interested in how these books that are fiction, if they motivate us to be active in dealing with climate change and being activists in fighting against it, in supporting, laws that are going to make our world better. It's a topic that really interests me. Or are we just talking about art and entertainment? So I'm just throwing that out there because that's just another topic that I find really interesting. Are these books that we're reading, are we just reading them for entertainment? Or are we actually, as human beings, like getting something out of them that's going to motivate us and make us change? What do you think?
I think the answer is yes, because it's a story. We get involved in stories. There's dilemmas, there's problems, there's solutions, there's all sorts of stuff. May not agree with the solution, may not agree with the path the person took, but it's there and it's challenging. It's entertaining, it's educational, but there's a lot of educational material out there too that is not in storybook form, and that's sometimes harder to grasp. But anyway, how do people find your book Inland? Where is it available?
It's on all major, you can get it on any of the online bookstores. You can go to 12 Willows Press, which is the press that published my book, and you can find it there as well.
And how do people get in touch with you if they want to have you come speak or whatever that might be of interest to you?
Yeah, please go to my website. It's theKateRisse.com, and you can fill out a form there.
And that's KateRisse.com for our audio audience that can't see the caption.
Correct.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude today's event. And Kate, I really and truly enjoyed ourselves today. That to me was a good talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Red. I really appreciated it. Thank you for having me on.
And I look forward to seeing you down the road, because we always have options for revisiting on various topics or new books or whatever. So don't be a stranger.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us here on The Wise Ones with Kate Risse. And very next 15, 18 minutes from now, looks like Talking Heads is the next show on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And this section now, I think, is week 4. We're talking about helping new authors get their books written. And today, my primary topic is competitor analysis. How do you know who your competitors are? What are their books? What do they contain? What value do you add that they don't? Those kind of questions, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out today's show and catch you back on Talking Heads here in literally just a few minutes. Take care.